morning to everybody. I am Alessandra Venturini, the holder of the Jean Monnet Chair in European Migration Studies, and I'm very glad to open the third series of the seminar Cocumint, Consumption of Cultural Goods as Driver of Migrant Integration. This year, the seminar has a special focus. We inquire into the inclusion of foreign artists, and we select the contemporary field because it is one where the linguistic difference is less important, but the difference in culture remains. We notice that for foreign artists, breaking through in contemporary art is much easier than in other fields like literature and so on. We want also to inquire how the different actors, the curators, the directors, and the owner, I would say, play in the director of Museum Art Gallery, the president of the constrain the accessibility of foreign artists in the public arena. I don't want to invest more time in the introduction. Let me introduce briefly the speaker of today, Robert McDowell, that we thank a lot for accepting the invitation. Robert McDowell in origin is Irish. He studied in Cambridge economics and he is fundamentally an economist, working, forecasting, investment, and so on. He is the owner of Summer Hall, which is the European biggest private multi-art center, which does not receive public money, so they are really free to choose the program to perform. They are very successful. They sell more tickets than, if I'm not wrong, the Olympic game and the football match. We would like to ask him to explain us how Summer Ball can be so successful, how they select the artists, how they select the curator which select the artist. But I leave the floor to Robert, knowing that all the colleagues that are here will be interested in asking plenty of questions. Robert, the floor is yours.
Okay. Very good to be here. Nice to see you all. And I will try to keep my remarks concise and short so we can get quite quickly, I hope, to questions and answers. First of all, I want to say that the Edinburgh Festival, of which my venue is only 5% of the total, which happens every year in Edinburgh, it was started in 1947. And it had its purpose was to heal the wounds of war through the languages of the arts. So the belief is that the arts are what the place, the people who can embrace across many divisions, many divides, many borders, many barriers inside societies and between societies. So our festival has contributions from 90 countries. In my own program, there's always at least 30 countries represented, and we are all the arts. Now, this means that every year, hundreds of thousands of people come here from all over. And so my few remarks are on one interesting, I think, question, which is that in migration issues, we have two dominant motivational ideas of what creates migration. One is economic, which we all know, and the other is forced or political. But what is missing is cultural. And it is my view that the authorities in the world are hypocritical. There's a big hypocrisy because on the one hand, we have a world market in cultural goods and services, which is not insignificant. It could be 10% of the whole. But we do not like the idea of migrants coming for cultural reasons. We do not like the idea that our cultural exports are encouraging migration. We like the idea that goods and money should flow freely across borders, but we do not like the idea that people should be able to be free to cross borders. And this is a terrible hypocrisy. So that is my main point. Of course, cultural motivation for migration can also be political. Questions of democracy and democratic freedoms are cultural. They can also be religious. They can be subjective perceptions as much as objective perception. They can also be proxy. There's a kind of proxy migration as well, where villages in some countries pay for some people to go abroad to earn hard currency. It's very much to do not only with the experience to be able to experience the world, but it's also about gaining hard currency, because only a few currencies in the world are truly tradable. In our culture, we do not choose in our program, cultural program, we do not choose by committee. We do not choose by democratic means. All artists, really, they are facing the democratic majority. They are operating in the democratic space. To do so means that they should never be dictated to by democracy or by committees. They must be free. They must be independent. So we choose by trusting individuals who know what is good. We never ask ourselves, what does the public want? What will the public find entertaining? What will the public pay for? We choose only what we think is good. And if we think it is good, then we hope there'll be enough in the public who will agree with us. So it seems to me that in general, the migration issue, which is enormous and which is only going to get bigger, it's not going to get smaller, is chaotic because there is no guidance, no official rules and laws by state to at least give people a time to be able to come and for cultural or political or economic or forced reasons to be able to come to get education or to get other creative freedoms or just to get experience of the rest of the world. And I feel very heartbroken by all the questions of the boat people and the criminality, etc., etc. And it is.
Robert, can I ask you a question on what you just said? You just said that you don't have a market analysis for choosing the art program to present. That you do, I remember that you told me there is a team of 10 persons with me that choose what they like. But this is what, in general, the curator want. Or
Yes.
you have selected the team with whom you choose the artist as, for instance, one British, the other, as you know, this thing has done in the United States, one Chinese, and so on, or to create a mix. You see, you can reach the public easily if you know very well the public and you make a selector of the artistic work to show.
Yes, but we're also very aware of the issues in the world. So, yes, we are, for example, at the moment in our building, at the top of our building, we are flying the flag of Ukraine, and below that, we are flying the flag of the opposition in Belarus, which is the flag of the soldiers who are fighting with the Ukrainians against the Russians. Of course, we are for peace. We're against war. When we are concerned about what is going on in Sri Lanka, we sponsor a film, we make an exhibition, We made several exhibitions. We are looking around all the time for the issues in the world which seem important. So we are not just choosing by what we think we like. We choose by what we think is good and what we think is important. We want all art to be great art.
So this is so you choose the issue, the problem that you consider more relevant, which the public has less information.
Well, in a full year, in my center, we make 1,400 shows and events. This is a lot, more than anyone else. We have a complex of 650 rooms. We have 9 theaters. We have 50 art gallery rooms. So when people come to us and want to do something, we do not have to say to them, you can come back in 2 years or 3 years. No, we can do it now. Somehow we will find space. And we find that when people come to us, we learn from them what are the issues. It's not that we just have an idea from our newspapers or news, what is important. People, artists tell us, yes, of course, curators. Yes, of course, curators. But there are too many curators. There are too many administrators. There are too many managers in the arts. We want to know what artists believe and think. Good artists, great artists. Many artists are not good and many artists are not great.
Yes. Yes, there is, you say there are the galleries that choose the art, they take care of him, they discover the art. They are the gallery which are just a market gallery. Sant'Agata was always saying.
The art market itself is about $100 billion a year in investment grade art. 2/3 of this money is criminal, tax evasion, and the proceeds of organized crime. It is a huge money laundering operation, which money launders roughly 10% of all illegal money flows across borders in the world every year. This is appalling, but luckily we are not part of this art market.
Yes, please go on. I interrupted you because I thought that this is a special place, Summer, or with a special cultural attention, which is usually done not in a private institution, but is done. The director of Castello di Rivoli, we mentioned that the documenta she organized was exactly in this intellectual, but she is a curator shows. She's not making any financial choice, and especially she's not making any public choice. Instead, you sell a lot of tickets, so that means that people want to see it. So why instead have only a expert or people in the field that they go there?
Well, let's look at from the perspective of the artist in poor countries in the world, in the so-called, what we used to call third world, fourth world, now also second world. A bit like rich people, unusually rich politicians or unusually rich business people, they do not feel that they have truly had a success until they have got some of their money in London or Miami or New York or Paris. In art, it's a bit like this. To be a success in anything of significance, you have to have your art seen in New York, San Francisco, London, and sometimes Edinburgh, and Berlin, and Paris, and Rome, and blah, 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 Madrid. So there are some similarities here, and I think that this is a whole area of responsibility that we have, for which we have very poor or no useful principles and rules and laws. When foreign artists come to Edinburgh every year, many thousands, to lose money to perform in the big competition that is really the Edinburgh Festival, if they come to London, they have difficulties at passport control because London doesn't understand our festival. If they fly directly into Edinburgh, they have no problem because, oh yes, you're coming to the Edinburgh Festival. That is good. The difficulties which artists, creative people, intelligent people have in getting enough time to visit our places and people around the world is a nightmare, and it's part of the migration issue. And so my main point in this talk is that we must have a much greater cultural focus and not just a focus on the political and the economic force of migration. We must have a way for voluntary cultural migration.
Thank you, Robert. I had a question. I'm, as a researcher, working on studying especially how conventions, the one under the auspices of UNESCO, influence cultural markets, but also cultural phenomena. And we know that there is the 2005 convention, UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity, that address as a key challenge the mobility of artists, requiring state parties, for example, to develop or to commit in policies for example, artistic mobility through visas and all these type of arrangements. I want to ask you, based on this, because also this is the key topic of the Cocumint series about artistic mobility, if from your perspective, policies addressing or targeting visas for artists are enough at the international level, or it has to be done more, based especially on your experience as yes, as a practitioner, based on the fact that you are organizing a lot of events and festivals. How those policies affect your work as a...
Well, it's hard for me to know because I cannot see everything that the artists experience who come here. But I hear stories, and I can see that there is a general problem that migration policy is dictated by ideas about what the public understand and what the public believe and what the public want. And that half of the public are not interested in culture. And of the half who are interested, only 40%, that's 20% of the whole population, are regular goers to anything cultural. Surveys have shown that people, when they go to another country or another city, they are 5 times more interested in culture than in their own home country or their home city. So to travel, to experience other people, to experience other countries, culture suddenly becomes an important factor. But it's not an important factor in the place where you live, for most people where they live. Half of our adults don't even read books. So because of this, I think culture is too low in the priority of the governments. And this is completely stupid because, in fact, so much of our trade is not just a trade in cultural goods and services, it's a trade which has been encouraged or incentivized by cultural factors. And culture is a much, much bigger reality, intercultural and international cultural and so forth, and world culture or whatever, and different movements and so forth, than most politicians ever have to think about. And this means that the rules, the principles, the moral ideas are very weak. There are many people who just think culture is a way to make money.
Yes.
This is wrong. They don't have an intellectual idea of culture.
Can I ask you something which is coming as a byproduct of previous conference? The Max Museum in Rome,
Yes.
or to attract in the museum people that never enter the museum. They were allowing yoga class in the museum. They also allowed the sport event celebration in the museum, but nothing more than this. And instead, I wonder how you are able to attract so many people. I wonder, you told me there are many places where people can drink beer, but I imagine there are many places also outside somewhere where you can drink beer. How you are
Yes.
able to attract the public?
In the British Isles, we get 5 times more people visiting museums than would be true if those museums were on the continent of Europe. Because on the continent of Europe, when you go to a museum, you must pay money. The museums are free. Museums should be free. Our museums try to get money from you after you come in, not before. If, for example, our Museum of Modern Art here in Edinburgh has more people visiting it than the same Museum of Modern Art in Berlin. And yet Berlin is a city with a national population the same size as Scotland. Of course, what happens is museums are very conscious of the need to get numbers in the door. And they count these numbers very crudely, so they will have yoga classes, they will have anything just to get numbers in. And this is fake.
And in fact, it was criticized a lot. Melandri, when she opened the museum to this activity. Well, instead, I think there is an opportunity because that what you have to attract people that feel the museum, the Magdalene say the museum is something for white people, and native think that the museum is for people different from the rich people.
Our museums are like churches used to be.
Yeah.
The churches used to be open. They were a free communal space where you could go in at any time for some spiritual peace, and you could even see great art. And then the churches became less popular, unfortunately, maybe, and the museums and the cultural spaces where it is free have been filling this gap. But we need to think about this a lot more. And we need to think about this cultural space as a free space and think about it on a world level. In the 21st century, there have been more new museums created in the world than in the previous 3 centuries, all added together. Of course, many of these museums are in China, but not only. There are a lot of new museums, but most of them are you have to pay to go in. They're not free museums like in our case. Our libraries, our museums should be free. Oh,
You cannot hear me?
I can see this. Hello.
Okay. Sorry. I wonder how you choose the artists, because you were saying, first of all, that you are a group of individuals choosing, and this is international art you're selecting. Do you have, who are the individuals? Do you have people from different countries coming together to do this? And how do you find the artists? Do they apply, or do you also travel around the world to find people to join you? What are the ways to do this?
Yes, we do both. We go to different parts of the world, and also they come to us. And but of course, sometimes we have to say to people, look, you are 20 people. You want to come to Edinburgh, it's going to be too expensive. Edinburgh in August is the most expensive city in Europe. It's ridiculous. To see play for 1 hour in a festival will cost 15 euros. To have a meal will cost you 100 euros. To stay in a hotel will cost you 300 euros. This is the world upside down. Our culture, in many ways, is very cheap. but that only allows many other things to be too expensive. And of course, in the download culture, which is the internet culture and the multi-channel television culture, getting to see productions is even cheaper. And we, in the live performance world, we have to compete with that. And then we also have another problem, which is the grant bodies, the government bodies who give money to culture. They tell us, no, you must always be cheap so that everybody can afford to come. You must be inclusive and so forth. But they don't care about all the economics of doing this. There's a very poor understanding and not enough care about the economics of culture. But I think also we need to have an economics of culture at the world level. We need to understand what it means at world level, what the costs are, and what is happening. We don't have enough data. Also, I have a love theory of economics, which means a love theory of economics is dealing with facts which there is no data. For example, the only region in the British Isles which has been a real success for the last 80 years is London. Every other region is not a success. The only other part of the British Isles which is like London is Dublin. Why is Dublin and London both so successful? Not because they make anything cheaper or better, because the world decided long ago that they want to love London, they want to love Dublin. They want to have excuses to go there. They love it for its cultural freedoms, its cultural feeling. So culture has a huge importance, but it is not one which people are measuring. And when we have a global cultural industry, we should not be surprised that there should be so much migration pressure. And we don't even know how much of it is permanent or how much of it is temporary. But we should accept it and not in a hypocritical way. We should not be saying, no, 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 just because you like our films doesn't mean that you can come to our country. This is stupid. Did I answer your question?
I think I was also asking about the individuals who are choosing.
Oh,
Can you say a few words about them?
The individuals who choose are very experienced people who, like me, who have seen maybe 2,000 plays, thousands of art exhibitions and other dance and music and so on. And so they know and they have their finger on the pulse a little bit of what is really good. And they should be people who understand the difference between true avant-garde and fake avant-garde. True avant-garde died in the mid-'80s, and fake avant-garde is what we live with today, where everybody thinks that the language of contemporary art must be avant-garde, but it's not a choice. Whereas in the days when people really made a choice were also the days when most of the audience were people who had some experience themselves playing the piano, amateur dramatics, making drawings and paintings. Today, not even 10% of our public have this experience, so we have a much more consumerist, passive public. We don't understand what it means to be an artist. And this is sort of tragic. In the days when people understood something of what it means to be an artist, they could be, of course, very critical, but at least their criticism came from something from the perspective of experience. Today, the public always want to know, what does something mean? What is it trying to tell me? They think that all the arts are a form of communication. They don't understand that the arts are about things which are beyond communication, beyond words. Which are not trying to be a medium to communicate. Of course, they communicate, but there's so much more than this.
Yes, they are emotion. And there is a lot of research which try to measure the effect of art participation and there is, in general, cortisol decline, endorphin increase, if you like the show, of course, and you feel better.
The great majority of artists, if they had to apply to an immigration department to say, I want to come to your country, and the immigration officer would say, show me your art. In 90% of the cases, the immigration official would decide that this artist is mad. Because it is the duty of all artists to make themselves mad. We have to make ourselves psychotic, almost certifiable, whether in Freudian or Jungian or whatever terms, it doesn't matter. The arts are about how to be mad, but how to be mad in a way which is healthy, which is productive, which is constructive. The role of the arts is to show the world that it is possible to take what you think means nothing, or has no value, or is a waste, or is stupid ideas which you should not think about. Oh no, we can take that and we can make something beautiful and something wonderful with that. It has real value. In the same way, migrants have fantastic value, and we are in a system which migrants are only a cost. This is mad. So I like to say that artists are the antidote to the prejudice against migrants.
Yes.
So many great artists. The great in history, the greatest artists were all migrants. They all left the provinces and came to the big city or came to another country.
I have Gianmaria Ianni, the lawyer that I described you to before, that is, I want to ask you a question.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm in these weeks. I'm teaching a course on law and contemporary law and arts, and a case I discussed with my students is the famous Brancusi burning space at the customs in New York City in 1928, where in fact, because of duties to be levied, the abstract sculpture by Brancusi was classified by the custom officials as kitchen utensils. And then there was a case which was organized by the curator, and the judge had to recognize that not because of his art, but because of his standing in international art world, that strange object was an artwork. So what you said now about having customs official scrutinizing whether the ones applying for a visa are artists or not, maybe thinking something I never thought about. Not really the object of art at the customs,
The control.
By the control, but the artist herself. So I just wanted to thank you for that input, because I will be discussing that with my students. And then you told me, and I would like you to say something more about that, that the customs officials can ask the artist, show me your art.
Well,
but I don't think
from the beginning of the 1960s, we brought thousands of artists and performances, theater, dance, music, and visual art from all of the Soviet Eastern Europe. Nobody else did this. We never did this for propaganda. We did this only to embrace between human beings across the big division that was dividing Europe. And we chose artists who are not always the ones that the governments wanted us to have, not at all, but we chose the ones who were real geniuses. And many famous East European, Central European artists who went on to become famous, they came here first. I can make a very, very long list. And what were they telling us? They were telling us that there's a humanity which is also our humanity in the communist world. Of course, when communism sort of died, and the Berlin Wall fell, and so forth. Then the West arrived in Central Europe, and what did it do? It built more Stalinist buildings than even the Stalinist architects ever created. It created a kind of fascistic idea of business, and this was appalling. This was a terrible cultural export, if you like. And so we have always encouraged and brought artists saying to the world, look, don't think that what you're doing is going to be permanent or wonderful for 1,000 years. No, we're going to treat it with satire. We're going to question it. We're going to ask questions all the time. This is the role of artists. Artists are as important to our society as independent journalists are important to our politics or our society. This is why artists have to be free.
Thank you. I have a second, completely different question. Talking about museums and different ways to attract public. There is a kind of new way, thanks to the technologies, to organize these full experience, Van Gogh and immersive experiences. And these are, on the media, in the sense they are pretty much criticized from someone's and very much welcome from others. What do you think about that kind of pop approach to?
I think it's kind of very silly because the immersive treatment of, for example, great paintings, there's immersive shows going around for different artists like Vincent van Gogh and so on. They are treating paintings like images. So you get a great big wall and you then are a small person inside this. I much prefer Ai Weiwei, who will do really big things which are too big to photograph. But what is important to me is that the art is an object. It's a thing. It's not just an image. Unfortunately, nearly all our art books always photograph art, but never in its frame, always as if it's just a picture. But for me, a painting is never just a picture; it is an object, and I learn from the physical reality of the object, not from the virtual reality of the picture. We also have a phenomenon in the world of white wall galleries and white wall museums. This started in 1930s Germany. For me, white walls are Nazi. Why? Because white walls turn everything into an image and stop it being a thing.
Yes, but Robert, I remember this summer you told me about this because you have a summer also the happening, so something more. You remember that you told me the story of the van, that the tourist entered the van, there is...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, these are not an object.
Well, no, this was Gerhard Schneider. He gave us the instructions. We created two rooms, completely white, and the public were only allowed in one at a time, and they queued up, and then they go into a third room, and they realize they're inside a transport container in which there are 12 naked black men. And these men know as soon as anybody comes into the container, they must not look them in the eye, they must not talk. And the public would stay for a few seconds and then leave in shock. But in those few seconds, they could understand about people trafficking, they could understand things about slavery and so forth, in a way which normally you would take an hour to teach somebody in a piece of theater. Well, we've done many different things like this where that is a good example of an immersive element, but it's not immersive using computer
Yes.
visuals.
So no, I was just to stress this because your presentation before seems that art is just something that you can touch. Instead, is also artistic. Is giving you can give emotion in many different ways.
we can have we have had many kinds of installations where you're going into a whole space and everything it has been informed by the artist. And we will undoubtedly find a way to also make people think about the question of migrants. And this is something we have addressed it in various ways already. We have some shows on at the moment about one is about women in Iran. Another show is about dancers in Ukraine with films. You go in there, 3 films, and there are many objects, and we do things like this.
Yes, Robert, but I'm sure you being an economist, you count how many people visit an exhibit. And
No.
I wonder if this exhibit, for instance, I was at the Castle of Rivoli they make a big exhibit on the war painting,
Yes.
painting of war. There were Ukrainian art and so on. I was there for the opening, so the public was a lot, but was the public or the friend of the museum. I wonder how many people go there to visit this type of. Do you make calculation then?
The impact of a show is not dictated only by the numbers. And we could do a great show here, but if we did the same show in Hamburg or Rotterdam, maybe there would be 10 times more people. But in a year, we get maybe 750,000 people come here, or 750,000 visits. And so art shows could be seen by hundreds or more often by thousands. What does that mean? Sometimes it's just important that 1 or 2 really useful people see something and it really influences them and changes how they're going to work. So it's not a numbers game, but of course it's useful to know about the numbers.
Sure. But you see, public museum, at least the director has to take care also if the show is visited. Yeah. And while the curator, they are more related to their own environment, they want to be recognized by the other curators, the director needs also to make calculations.
Well, the best curators are artists. When Joseph Beuys was alive, nobody would ever make a Beuys show that he wasn't really the curator. And if the artist is alive, the artist is the best curator, but also other artists can curate other artists' work. In the late 80s, the government here said to itself, oh, the arts are always needing money. This must mean that the arts are not very good at managing money. So they encouraged Goldsmiths College in London to create a course to teach arts management, arts administration.
Yes, now are very trendy.
Now, very trendy. In the UK alone, there are 99 university colleges which teach arts management.
Yes.
88 of them to postgraduate level. The consequence is that 40% of all the people who have full-time jobs in the arts are arts administrators. They didn't have to learn to play the piano or to paint or to dance. This means that more than half of all grant money which the government gives to the arts or private donors give to the arts goes to pay the wages and the salaries of managers, not to make art. This is terrible. So the very solution to make the arts more efficient financially becomes the biggest obstacle to the arts ever being financially balanced.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, because also in Italy there are now many courses on management. I don't know if your master is on management of art. No, Enrico is the director of a master, but not management of art. And
May, on these subjects, may I ask you, what do you think about subsidizing artists as some governments did in the past, thinking about Netherlands, for example, and then decided not to proceed on that. Is there a kind of I would say sense in paying a kind of wage to young artists?
The average artist of all kinds earns about 15,000 euros before tax. The average arts manager earns 30 or 40,000 euros before tax. The average contribution, well, the typical contribution to the cost of the arts, the investment upfront to make things happen, more than 1/4 comes from the artists themselves. So the artists are also paying in many ways to make their art or their play or their music or whatever. We have too few politicians who have any artistic, I mean, this is Churchill. At least Churchill knew how to paint. And we have a king now who knows how to paint. But we have far too few politicians anywhere in Europe who know anything about the arts. Really, they think it's just a social elegance. The people who collect great art, expensive art, they do it as much for social one-upmanship as because they think it of any great intellectual meaning or intellectual value. And art critics have been pushed to the side. So we have far too little intelligent media coverage about the arts. And if you don't have media coverage about the arts are worth nothing. The last time anybody was arrested for anything in the arts in Edinburgh was in 1979, because they did something on the street. Today, it doesn't matter what you do inside the art center. Nobody will arrest you. No ministers in the church will have palpitations. Nobody will write letters to the Times. We find it very, very difficult to shock people anymore in our art centers because everything is expected to be a little bit shocking. And this is very bad. It shows that the public don't care enough. And of course, what do the public care about? They care about what they will talk about with their friends. If they will not talk about theater or art, or they talk more about music maybe, but we need to get them to talk more. And for this, I also think they need to be able, through culture, to also talk about the world, to talk about other countries, to talk about other language groups, other religions, other ways of thinking, and so on.
There is a question of a student. I'll ask you.
Yeah.
So I can see and ask your question.
Good afternoon, I'm Luigi. My question, in my opinion, normally the art made by museum, the exhibition are from elite, from people who have some knowledge and some specific interests, and not from migrant, because even when the art and the exhibition talk about migrants, yes, this kind of art is not from there. For example, now in Turin there is an exhibition of JR that talk about refugees, but it's for white people, while generally the art who wants migrants is made up by them, is their culture, and is a popular culture generally, culture, art, exhibition, etc. So my question is, it can be useful try to meet and link these two words, the word of popular culture and the culture of museum, and how it can be possible.
Well, traditionally, the museums would only show the work of dead people. And the museums traditionally would only show the work of famous dead people. Then, about 40 years ago, they started to show contemporary artists. And sometimes I feel that this is not sensible. I much prefer it when they just focus on art, and artists who have passed a long test and are considered good enough. In terms of the migrants, though, I think if you look around, nearly, as I said earlier, nearly all the most famous artists were at some time or other a migrant. They moved. And we think of Picasso, for example, but we can think of many, many others, most, and many of the Americans. And of course, we can always ask very searching questions. And, is this really dealing with the subject it is trying to deal with, and so on and so on. But, I'm always very moved by the fact that there's always something in good art which can move you about to think and to make your imagination leap, and make your imagination leap to another time or another culture or another place. In fact, you could say that the arts are not national. The contemporary arts, and also even historically famous art, they're not national, they are international. And so internationalism is absolutely hardcore to the arts, to culture. Of course, the museums, however, like to talk about national culture. They like to express culture as if it comes only from a country. When you look at famous artists of all kinds, they're influenced by the artists and arts thing in many other countries, not only in their own country. So the arts or culture generally is a very good example of where people try to put it into a nationalist box which it absolutely does not belong to. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. He has moved back to the room. Yeah. You see, there is a big difference between gallery and museum.
Yes.
And I have the feeling that also among the galleries there is many differences. Among the museum there are many differences. And I'm just speaking in contemporary art. Some of the galleries really are playing a special role because try to discover young artists and so on, and they do especially of promotion training. Some of museum, for instance, the Maxi last year has done 2 exhibits on African young artists and 2 exhibits on Afghani artists. You see, they try to move in promoting. So also the museum now, they try to open their doors to new people.
Well,
Do this always. I wonder if the public is going after to see.
well, we try to show more than just the art. We want to show the influences. We want to show the materials that people were working with. We want to show the context, so that we get a bigger impression of the origin of the art or the artist. I think this is important. It's wrong to think that the job of the artist is only to make a product. the job of the artist is to be an artist, the whole experience, the way of life. And in many ways, a great artist is like a priest, or a great gallery dealer is like a priest. They are not simply commercial, and they're not simply about making product.
Yes. But when we look at the life of the famous artists, they always had painful life, and they became famous in the last part of their life or even after they died. This is a strange cycle for artists that after reach important value.
Well, I think it's true about not just art, but a great artist, great art with a poor strategy will not succeed nearly so well as a bad artist with a great strategy.
Okay, you're right.
Strategy is more important than art. The form is more important than the content. How you sell ideas is more important than the quality of the ideas. This is a kind of a tragedy. We do not live in an automatic meritocracy. And so what happens around and how something is talked about, presented, thought about, how it is thought to be important. What really is important for people? That's always a hard one.
That is very difficult question.
How to be relevant, but that is the creative question.
Yes, sure.
Mark Muller will be here soon, and he is the UN chief negotiator in the war in Ukraine, Syria, Sudan, etc. And he is coming to tell me about his meetings with Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden recently in Belfast to celebrate 25 years since the end of the 30-year civil war in Northern Ireland. And what has it got to teach us about how to find peace? Well, this is always the question for our art. What understandings can help people to understand across stupid divisions, ideological or national or class or language, etc.? And another big issue, of course, all the time is now global warming, but it's also the threat of nuclear war again, blah. And so we have a constant flow of big questions. And the question then is, can artists make any contribution? Sometimes we have maybe 20 things on at the same time, all talking about the same thing. For example, most popular, the biggest theme in for many years, of which maybe we have had more than 1,000 productions, has been women's rights, women's equality, women's politics, gender politics, etc. And what is so interesting is that every time, every artist, every production tells you something different. So these very big questions have many, many facets, and we cannot think that any one artist or any one theatre group or piece of music is going to give us all the answers. It's part of everything else, but we have to try. And what is the alternative? Well, we can see the alternative in where people think only to make arts which are entertainment. We don't believe in this. We don't want entertainment. We want people to cry more than we want them to laugh.
But both.
Laugh and cry at the same time.
Yes. I don't know if Wimke has additional questions. The students are satisfied like it, Gianmaria as well. Enrico has left because he started the master. Wimke, do you have another question?
No, I'm fine, thank you. Well, it's a very interesting talk. Thank you very much.
I'm so happy. I mean, it seems quite simple to me, but to maybe to you too. I just think that we have to have much more thinking about how we understand how cultures fight or combine, make love or make war.
Okay. Okay. So, Robert, thank you very much for your time, for what you said. I will send you the registration for your approval to put online. And I will
You have my approval, whatever.
Yes, yes. I will thank you also on behalf of my colleagues that were here and all the students of the seminar.
Well, thank you all for your patience in listening to me. I hope I have spoken clearly. Many English language people don't know how to speak English to foreigners because we always use colloquialisms and we use stupid expressions and we don't talk in complete sentences. So I hope what I have said has been always very easy to understand.
The British jokes are difficult to follow, but when you speak plain, it's easy.
The British jokes are really Irish in origin. And the essence of British humor is intelligence in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's all.
So thank you very much, Robert.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.